nothing to it. Go ahead and bring Goliath on. Ain't no giant, I ain't gon' fire on. Catch a fade, you I'm warm, I'm gone. Y'all can catch the wave that I am on. I am icon, y'all are wide wrong. Think that I'm more reconcile bonds. Here ain't nothing to it though. This is on me, ain't got much to do with who you know. Keeping it true to from 10 L's into a milli though. But they already knew that those farewell to your opinions. Know that he is so. This is all me, ain't got much to do with who you know. Yeah, keeping it true to form, but they already knew that, y'all. Here we go.
It is week 3 of the Saturday Pigskin right here on the OH Report, brought to you by Scout Construction LLC. Week 3 just wrapping up actually this morning after a wild Friday the 13th last night. Thunderstorms all over the area, and we're bringing some more storms right into your living room right now. I'm Brian Skowronski, joined by the boys Effie James and Erik Will, and obviously, like I just mentioned, the weather played a big part last night in a couple of the outcomes. Several teams had to go back onto the field this morning on Saturday and finish up. What's your guys' top 15 seconds worth that you can tell me about week 3? What happened there?
You know, for me, it was a great rebound for Clear Fork. I thought Brennan South played very, very well, recovering from the 3 picks against Granville the week before. For him to come out and play the way he did, I thought was stellar. They really settled themselves down early and did a great job. And then, you know, the second thing for me was, you know, just that great matchup with Lucas and Northmor, and you know, Lucas going down, and we'll see how they rebound.
You know, I thought from the weekend, you know, Clear Fork rebounding and getting a big win against Lex was huge for the area football, and you know, that was a competitive game. But I think clearly Clear Fork came back ready to play. And also, my other thought for the weekend was like getting ready for the elements now. You know, this is a time of year where the weather is going to start to change for everybody. Teams have got to be ready to play, whether it's rain, it'll be snow here soon around this area. So just getting ready to play in the elements and what kind of challenges that can bring, specifically the offenses around.
All right, let's go ahead and show you all the moving pictures that we have in the run back. Here's the highlights from all the games that we were at last night. We begin with former conference rivals Lexington and Clear Fork meeting for the first time since 2016. Colts were fired up for this matchup, and their senior quarterback Brennan South, well, as we mentioned, he had a monster game. 32-yard hookup right here with Ashland Lion made it 7-0 in favor of the Colts, and they got athletes all over the field again, Coach, I noticed.
Yeah, they did a really nice job, came out ready to go. Like I said, like the rebound that South had. I was really impressed with that young man right there, ran very, very hard. Obviously only got to see a half, but in the half that I saw, very impressed with Clear Fork.
That was Elijah Hughes barreling in. It was 14-0, then a big pig. Brennan South picks off Cole Pauly right at the 1-yard line. Lexington looked like they were going to cut into the lead. Instead, Colts go the other way, and they blow this thing wide open this morning. They roll 43-16. Clear Fork gets the 2-1. Home opener for Ontario, hosting Black River. Jalen Scott. You're going to learn the kid's name right now. He had himself a day. Here's the big explosive play, putting the Warriors out in front. And they utilized him a lot in this game, fellas, in the passing game. And for the passing game for Black River, it's going the other way. It's the little engine that could. Owen Hatfield taking the pick and heading back 40 yards. And the Warriors doing some things at home. They're just a different looking team. This is their first one in front of the home fans.
Yeah, with Scott really adding some speed to that team. They're already a pretty fast team as far as their skilled players, but having their home opener now playing very well against a Black River team that's got some decent athletes, this is a great win for the Warriors.
And 2 straight wins for the boys in the blue. Battle of unbeatens at Bob Wine Field. Northmor took an early 14-0 lead in this game as you see them getting into the end zone there. The Cubs defense came up with some clutch plays throughout the entire contest to keep them in it. Here's one right here. Forcing the fumble as Northmor coughs it up. And then later, you're going to see Logan Niswander is going to connect with Ethan Sauter in the end zone. The Cubs cut this thing down to 14-13, but they missed the extra point. That would turn out to be huge. Long weather delay, and then in the second half, on the game-winning potential drive there, Niswander gets picked off. Northmor with a big win, still unbeaten now at 3-0. Different case for Ashland, who was looking for their first win of the season at home last night, taking on Columbian, a tough team to bounce back against. And Nick Jackson, well, he has some other ideas. He explodes 58-yard touchdown right out of the gate. Second play, I got to imagine for them, I mean, you can't start any better than that.
Yeah, you know, for Ashland right now, they're reeling, but their biggest problem is the fact they're playing one of the toughest schedules in the state of Ohio for their division, and it doesn't get any easier coming up either.
It was 7-7 after Mitch Heilman hooked up with Jaden Jones for the touchdown, but just too many big plays for the Tornadoes as they break this thing wide open in the second half. 31-7, the Arrows falling to 0-3 as they finish up this thing at 1 a.m. So are those games that we just saw the moving pictures for, Effie, what would you say, what's the top storyline of those 4 highlights?
Well, watching Clear Fork bounce back, you know, that had to, you know, get them in a unfamiliar place, seeing them, you know, they lost their first game and at home in a long time in the regular season, and to have them have to come right back the next week against a local rival and go on the road and pick up that win, that was huge for them. So seeing them get a win, and also Lexington didn't play all that bad, but Clear Fork looks that they have righted the ship there, and that was an interesting takeaway that I got from the weekend.
And an interesting note there, Minutemen seniors never beat Clear Fork in football. They said crazy outcomes in 7th grade, 8th grade, freshman year, and then in JV, so they never got an opportunity to beat the Colts. That's going to stick with them for a long time. And one thing I also wanted to point out about Clear Fork, Brady Tedrow has not played for them this season, and they thought that was going to be probably their top returning guy this year. So I think they got things cooking in the Valley. They got a big game coming up next week at home against Bellevue. Shelby on the road last night at Big Walnut, Coach, 21-14. They ended up losing that game. What did you hear about the Whippets' performance and what led to that loss? Yeah,
it sounded like it was a very competitive game. You know, Shelby got out to a 6-0 lead, kind of botched the extra point from what I understand. Big Walnut came back and answered. It sat at 7-6 for quite a while. Then Big Walnut took the lead, 14-6. Then Shelby, you know, just like last week against Lexington, Grant Gossam, 97-yard kickoff return. They got the 2-point conversion. It was tied. It seemed very evenly matched. Big Walnut, quite frankly, just made a few more plays, and I think Shelby kind of had the penalty bug going last night, so that didn't help their cause. But, you know, there's no shame in losing to a team the caliber of Big Walnut with their tradition. Obviously, they didn't play the tradition last night, but you still played a quality team. And, you know, I also think a big thing in this, and Effie and I were talking about this before we started, you know, Division II school, just a few more bodies. When it's 90 degrees out, you know, I'm not making an excuse, I'm just explaining, but it does matter in that, especially you know, in those trenches.
Another local team that we had go on the road last night, Mansfield Senior over at Westerville North, where the Tigers shutout win 14-0, and the defense still has not allowed a touchdown all year long. Effie, what are you hearing about the Tigers and how they feel about their performance?
Well, you know, like you said, the defense, you know, they start and end with their defense. That's their engine right now, and that's okay. You know, the offense played better this week. Cam Todd threw an interception this week. He also had a touchdown this week. The offense still is playing inconsistent. They had a few turnovers, which, you know, otherwise than that, I don't think Westerville would have even came close to scoring. But the Tigers, you know, at this point are the class of the area just based on the way they play defense. They have legit recruits on the offensive line. They have star power in the secondary, so they are playing well. Their offense, though, has got to get better and more consistent. And I know Cam Todd's going to get better. The offensive line is going to play better, but they have got to get more consistent. And right now they're looking for an identity offensively. And because right now it's just the defense getting the ball close enough on the opposite side of the field so they can score. That's their identity right now. But the offense has got to find an identity, and I know they will. They'll get that done.
Cam Todd, clearly that's the key out there. 12 of 20 last night, over 200 yards in the touchdown, and they also had the rushing touchdown, so he accounted for all their points. So maybe a little confidence booster as they get moving forward to take on West Holmes this next week. And a stat that I saw, the Tigers, they've only allowed 450 total yards through 3 games this season. So, whoo-wee, that's tough. Speaking of tough, Madison falling to 0-3, and their schedule has been brutal. Their combined record, 8-1. They lose to Bellevue last night. 28-0 was the score at halftime, and then they just decided with the weather delay to go ahead and call that thing. Just thoughts on the Rams and just their start to the season? Obviously, tough competition.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say. Is I can tell you from personal experience, an Ed Nasani coached Bellevue team is going to be very disciplined. They're not going to hurt themselves. Penalties, turnovers alike, and they're going to be extremely physical. I can pretty much guarantee, without seeing it, I know how the war in the trenches went. And this is a game of football. You can spread people out. You can throw nice curtains out, but if the foundation isn't settled, that house is going to collapse. So you got a collapsed house with really nice curtains. And so when they continue to build upon that foundation, which is going to be their offensive, defensive lines, they will get better. But there is no doubt that they're being more competitive this year than they were in the first year under Coach Stopka.
All right, we're going to go ahead and send Erik over to the whiteboard now. We're going to school you cats at home on some power stretch runs.
All right, guys, we live in the world today of zone reads, power stretches, RPOs, all of these different acronyms and different ways of playing football. But it really just comes down to the offense is just trying to create numbers matchups, and they're trying to create a situation where they isolate one specific defender. So we're going to come over here to the whiteboard and take a look at the power stretch. This became kind of really famous in Ohio, or kind of where people started knowing about it with Braxton Miller. When Urban Meyer brought Braxton Miller into his film room and said, this is going to be one of our staple plays for you. So what we're going to show you is kind of the way Clear Fork does this. There are so many different ways to run the power stretch, but here's one way. So we're going to send this guy in motion. The quarterback, when the ball snapped, the quarterback is going to, in a perfect world, he's going to really get that thing into the running back's belly, and he's going to continue out. Now the running back is going as if he's getting the ball, because there's a good chance he could get it. Now there are two guys that we're primarily going to read in a zone stretch. That's either this end or this backer. Whoever we feel can hurt us the most is going to be read. That's the idea of the power stretch, or really any kind of RPO or what have you. These guys are in man, so they're going to either run off or they're going to block. The edge players always block for the running back. The interior are always blocking for the quarterback. So what happens is he's going to ride it in. We're going to go ahead and read the end for the purposes of this. We're going to have an outside release to this backer. We're going to step, check the nose, help if needed, but then we want to work to this Mike backer. We're going to scrape, work up, pick up the will, and then we're going to scoop here. So what we have is, we have the potential for an edge, and we have the potential for the quarterback to read and get vertical right now. If the defensive end goes out, quarterback keeps. If the defensive end stays in or sits home, we're going to go ahead and hand off to the running back. It's really that simple when you're running the power stretch. So let's go to the film, and let's see how Mr. South runs this. So you're going to be able to see we have our motion, we have our receiver, which would be this gentleman here coming down to block, and he's going to put it in, the defensive end's out, and there's your run. So he's being tackled by a second or third level player. So that's basically simply looking at the basics of the power stretch.
So there's an in-depth breakdown, Brennan South on the power stretch last night, and we're going to see more of him right now in Friday Night Phenoms presented by Baker Collision. Our first Phenom Award goes to Brennan South of Clear Fork, as the senior QB had a special game in a rivalry matchup, throwing for 5 touchdowns in a win over Lexington on the road. The dual threat tore to the rock a baker's dozen times, 2 on the ground, nearly 300 total yards of offense for the Colts stud signal caller, and oh yeah, how about a pair of takeaways as well? 2 interceptions for Brennan in this game, as Clear Fork wins on the road at Lexington 42-16. South, a major reason why the Colts were able to bounce back after suffering their first loss in the regular season in nearly 3 years. How about the performance by Ontario junior wideout / tailback Jalen Scott? Over 200 total yards from scrimmage and a pair of scores in a Warriors 55-29 shootout victory at home that took place Friday night, and then they had to resuit up again Saturday morning. Did not slow this kid down at all. Explosive plays oftentimes make the difference in a contest. Scott had a handful of them for the Warriors. Really broke things open, making plays out of the backfield in the passing game, and overall just providing a threat that the Pirates needed to key on as Ontario gets the win. Our next Phenom winner is Lucas Jr. running back Ethan Sauter, who had a great overall game in the Cubs' home opener against Northmor. Now, Lucas didn't win, but it certainly wasn't because of this dude. Nearly 90 yards and a score for the Cubs' ground attack did Sauter rack up for them, also accumulating nearly 40 receiving yards and a TD grab as well. Sauter also had a nice run back for Lucas in the return game. Solid overall performance in a tough matchup. Tough loss for the Cubs in this game, but Sauter certainly was a standout in every aspect of the contest. And finally, our out-of-the-area phenom is Columbian senior athlete Nick Corper. Solid two-way player who also does work as a return specialist as well. A little bit of everything for this dude as he tallied 9 grabs in a 31-7 win over Ashland on the road. Almost 100 receiving yards for Corper as well, who also carried the pail 3 times for 26 yards and a Tornadoes touchdown. Big win for Tiffin to stay unbeaten at 3-0. Nick Corper helping the charge for the Tornadoes, who remain unbeaten heading into week 4. So those were your top individual performances of the week. Now let's check out the top 5 plays of the week, brought to you by North Central State College. Our first nominee comes from this stadium. Ontario showing out in their home opener, and it's the Water Bug. Owen Hatfield picking off Black River's Dylan Kimmett, and he's got VIP for 6 lined up in the back of the zone. Awesome pressure up front applied by Easton Clifton leads to the errant throw, and you won't like Owen Hatfield when he grips the rock, if you're the opponent. 40 yards off to the races gets the Ontario fans screaming for the score. Nominee number 2 goes out to the Tiffin Tornadoes. Huge hole up front for Nick Jackson, who goes all dizzy like a human tornado. Spin cycle on full overload leaves some arrows laundry on the turf. Check it out again. Great lead blocking gives Jackson a crease, then he spins like a teacup at a carnival, then takes the big prize. 58 yards and a 6-pack of points as Columbian rolls 31-7. Play number 3 looks like a standard Brennan South keeper, but really, it's a one-handed snag by Jackson Meyer, setting up Clear Fork in the red zone. Left hand not included in this 35-yard special. Feast your peepers one more time on this Colts corral. Sick catch by the senior, helping Clear Fork get a rivalry win on the road. At numero 4, let's stay put right here in Lexington, where Brennan South has some more tricks up his sleeve. Breaking the pocket and finding Ashton Lyon, who shakes out the defender, then rattles and rolls 32 yards in for Pater. So many great layers to this play. The mobility by South, throwing across his body on the run, the catch in tight coverage, then how about the downfield pancake by the wideout to set up the whole score. Finally, we head out to Lucas, where visiting Northmor remains undefeated thanks in part to this key set by Golden Knights sophomore Trenton Ramos. The interception, of course, huge, but how about the slick moves here on the run back by the youngster? Northmor improves to 3-0 with a monster road win, clinched late by Ramos' INT, and he flipped the field position to secure the W. Remember, for all you folks at home, you can vote in so many different ways on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, so make sure that you make your vote count. Vote for the top play of the week. Speaking of week 3, let's go ahead and put a little bow on it. Tell me about your synopsis from what we've seen from all the local area teams. What is the top takeaway? What's the number 1 storyline that you're going to be talking about this week, Erik?
For me, it's going to be, Clear Fork playing very, very well, rebounding. Also, Ontario being 2-1, and now playing with momentum going into that matchup next week that they have starting conference play. And that's just it. Finalizing. Many conferences are many teams are finalizing their non-conference schedule. So now teams are going to start getting into their conference slate. So now it's going to be chasing league titles, and so for me, seeing people tie that bow around their non-conference, trying to set themselves up for potential postseason play.
And I thought looking at, teams like Lucas and Shelby who had gotten off to a really good start, but then taking a loss here in week 3, that's an interesting concept because now you've got to really see what your team is made of. Getting off to a fast start in football season can be a blessing, but it also can be a curse because if you struggle in week 3 or week 4, then you really got to see, okay, how is my team going to respond? Now going into what is now the meat of the season. Pretty soon, most teams will be playing conference games coming up. So for those 2 teams specifically, it's really important for them to bounce back and get back on that winning track and at least start playing better football heading into their conference games.
So let's turn the page now on week 3. Let's head over to week 4. Here's some of the top matchups that we have going down in the area. Shelby at Ontario, a couple of 2-1 teams. West Holmes at Mansfield Senior. Tigers looking to go to 4-0. Ashland at Sandusky. Arrows could be looking at 0-4 in the face. Lex at Mount Vernon, and surprisingly, the Jackets still unbeaten this year. Madison at Worcester, and then Bellevue at Clear Fork, another really good game. Let's go ahead and pull out our crystal balls again. What's your bold call, Erik? What's going to happen next Friday night?
You know what, I'll tell you what, last week I know I went a little crazy. You guys didn't believe me.
Well, we're really back in a little bit.
Really back in. But this one, what I'm going to say now is I think Clear Fork gets the win against Bellevue. I think they're going to get back to the Valley. I think they got that taste out of their mouth of that loss. I think it refocused the group. They're going to have a very highly motivated Bellevue team coming in. But I'm going to go ahead and give Clear Fork the nod right now. I do think that is truly a 50-50 game.
It's so easy in high school and any kind of football level to just go with who's rolling and who's doing well and who's playing poorly. But I've seen Ashland and their program has been, traditionally very, very good. And I think any team at this point, you see a team that's 0-3 coming in, naturally as a young player, you're going to take them lightly. And I think the Blue Streaks may wake up a bear in Ashland next week. So I'm gonna call that Ashland's gonna get the win against Sandusky because I really believe they still have the tools. I think they have the offensive firepower, and I think right now they got the motivation to get a non-league win and really wake themselves up before they get into conference play.
You hear that, Arrows? We still believe in you here on the Pigskin, so go out there, get a victory on the road. I'm going to step out on the ledge a little bit. I think talent-wise, the Shelby Whippets got the better team, but when you talk about the atmosphere over there at Ontario, that student section is second to none. They are the best. They're going to have things rolling over there. It's going to be a great environment, and I'm picking the Warriors to upend the Whippets next week. That's going to do it for us here on the Saturday Pigskin. For Erik and Effie, I am Brian. We will see you right back here on the OH Report.